We'd like to call a meeting to order. Jackson County Commission, November 16, 2017. This will be a continuation of the November 13, 2017 meeting. Mr. Manning, if you would, do a roll call.
Yes, sir. District 1, Mr. Guffey. Present. District 2, Mr. Venable. Present. District 3, Ms. Gilbert.
Present.
District 4, Mr. Sips.
Present. Chairman
also present.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Next thing we have is approval of the agenda for today, November 16, 2017. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Next thing on the agenda is old business. This is where we left off, excuse me, last time. It is a discussion on community corrections. And at this time, Mr. Guffey, would you like to proceed with the discussion?
Where we stand right now is after 2 years of investigating, we found that it'd be better for the county to take over community corrections, and then Mr. Porter may be able to fill in more blanks than I can.
Where we started 2 years ago, and I don't want to belabor this too much, we started 2 years working with Mike and Brandon, trying to get some information after a request was made to the commission. The commission had very little information at that time, and very little documentation regarding community corrections. So we began to work on that with Mike and Brandon. Worked on that for a number of months, more than a year. And about this time last year, went to Mike and Brandon, Community Corrections, and requested that they cooperate with us in doing an audit, allowing us to do an audit. The county has very little authority over community corrections because of the way the statute's written. But we do get funds from community corrections. They pay us 2 checks, I think it is, for 2 different things, and so we asked for an audit to be able to determine for our own purposes whether or not those funds, the money we were getting was accurate, and also to look at some other aspects of community corrections. So we hired a CPA to do that, and they provided some records to him through the accountant that represents community corrections. They worked together, our CPA worked with their CPA to try to get some records. I think the short of it is that our auditor was not able to get the records that he needed in order to verify that the commission was receiving the funds that they were supposed to receive. And so he basically said, I really cannot do a true forensic audit without a tremendous amount of expense on the county's part, but he had some initial findings which he provided to the county, which basically said that he couldn't do an audit based upon the records that he was provided by community corrections. So that's really from a financial standpoint. Since the county has little control over or authority over community corrections, the way it is established right now, as I understand it, I think right now it's established as, if I understand correctly, a nonprofit entity operating the community corrections program. So they are an entity to themselves, and they are supervised by the Department of Corrections. So that's sort of where we are as far as the county is concerned. Like I said, that's a short summary of what we've been doing for the last 2 years.
Well, if this is what we decide to do, Department of Justice may lay out what steps need to be done for the county to be able to take this over on it.
Jeff Williams, Department of Corrections. There are provisions in 1518-170 that lays out how community correction program is set up. There's basically 3 ways. The county commission can operate a community corrections program as a part of the county government. The employees would be county employees, of course. The county can also set up an authority in which all of these provisions are laid out in the statute. The authority is kind of maybe separate from a county. It would be an extension of the county to some degree. The other way, which is the way Jackson County is currently set up, is a nonprofit can run and operate a community corrections program. All of those are required to operate in accordance with the statute, and those provisions are clearly laid out. The way the program is currently set up now, the county can defer, we'll say. They can either choose to operate or not to and support a nonprofit. A lot of the counties in Alabama, and there's roughly about 49 of the 67 counties have a community correction program. The majority of those are basically run by a nonprofit. So it really depends on the county. But if in fact you go in that direction, it would be the end of the basic contract year. We go on a fiscal year, roughly beginning on October 1 through September 30th.
Can I ask a question then? If the county, if this commission were to decide that it would be in the best interest of the citizens of this county for the county to operate such a program, the first time that the county could begin to operate that program officially would be the beginning of the next fiscal year. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Manning, do we have anybody signed up on the list that wants to?
No, sir. Is there any of our nearby counties, neighboring counties, doing it like we're talking about here?
I'd have to go back and look at the map. DeKalb County is DeKalb Cherokee. They're basically a nonprofit operating it.
Madison County would have joined us.
Madison County. Madison County program is set up a lot different from some of the other county programs. It's been in existence probably about 25 or so years. They operate a community corrections program, but I would say if you looked at the majority of the ones, and there's only a handful that's really operated by the county, probably less than 10 that do it that way, and most of them are different. The Madison County one does have an in-house kind of a work release type facility, and the offenders that they divert are not all offenders that would typically be coming to the Department of Corrections, as is authorized in the statute. And that's why community corrections is a local run type program, because it gives the county the option of using the program to divert misdemeanors. In some cases, they're used for some sort of pretrial supervision, but there's an array of different functions that you can carve a community corrections program into. But yeah, the Madison County one is a county-run program, but it's not necessarily consistent with the other county-run programs. You've got Shelby County that runs a work release program. You got down in Houston County, they have a work release program attached to theirs.
Mr. Porter had stated that part of it is that they're to be supervised by the DOC. And so what do you do? What does that mean? What does that entail that you are doing? Have you seen anything with our local organization?
Well, under the statute, the Department of Corrections lays out guidelines for certain requirements. If you're going to set up a community correction programs, there are certain provisions. Senate Bill 67, which was the criminal justice reform passed in 2015, kind of reformed community supervision in the state. It largely impacts pardons and parole, but also impacts community corrections. What we do at the Department of Corrections level is we develop rules and policies and guidelines for dealing with state inmates. And our primary focus are the inmates, or offenders rather, that are diverted into the community correction program that would otherwise be incarcerated in a DOC facility. So not everyone under the program falls in that category, but the rules that we promulgate are ones that specifically focus on those individuals. There are certain requirements about supervision. Supervision has to be evidence-based. There's risk and needs assessment that has to be conducted on all of the offenders. The offenders are to be supervised in accordance to their risk levels. There's programming for offenders that score moderate to high risk. There's a requirement that they receive treatment consistent with the risk assessments that are performed on each of those individuals. So kind of in a nutshell, we just kind of we try to provide support, technical assistance, and working with the programs in any way that they need us to help them provide both the treatment aspects and the supervision aspects of it.
So do you follow up on documentation of that these things are being taken?
We do a program assessment of all the programs that we contract with, because keep in mind we're using taxpayer dollars in order to help support the supervision part for offenders. Granted, the state isn't offering all of the funding necessary to provide supervision and treatment. So some of that likely comes from offender fees.
But you've not noticed any violations in what they're supposed to be doing for you? They provide you with everything?
Oh yes, absolutely. The Department of Corrections has no issues with the Jackson County Community Correction Program. We've done program assessments, and they've provided to us every document that we've required of them. Now, our audits, and we changed these several years ago because what we don't want to do is we don't want to overburden any program in terms of requiring them to provide to us information that the state doesn't necessarily need. So the audits that we do are compliance audits. So we have a list of criteria and responsibilities, and these compliance audits lay out each of the provisions that's required of the programs. And Jackson County has been compliant.
Are those documents public knowledge?
Sure, absolutely. We can make available to you anything that we've done as it relates to this program.
I assume that you guys get complaints. There was roughly 49 different counties did it. Do you receive complaints from throughout the state? And is Jackson County more? Do we get more complaints or less complaints, or is it average? Or
I'm not aware of any complaints, but in reference to your question, I think anybody, you know, that operates anything, there's I get complaints in my office from the Department of Corrections, but in terms of where I think you're going with your question, we don't have any complaints that I am aware of that involves the operation, the effectiveness, or the efficiencies of the Jackson County Community Correction Program. And if we were, and in cases where we do get a complaint from an individual or from wherever, then we contact the program. You know, we look to them to work it out, and if there's something that we can do to assist in that, then that's what we attempt to do. But I'm not aware of any complaints against the Jackson County program.
But just to clarify, you would only be contacted for state prisoners that are in the program, not any local, just county offenders that are having to go through the program or anything. You are just the compliance forms, the complaints, anything like that, you would only be dealing with state prisoners that are in the program.
Well, in terms of who may contact us, I mean, anybody may contact us if they choose to. Now, if it's a matter that does not involve the Department of Corrections, obviously we pass that on. You know, whoever contacts us is just whoever contacts us.
Okay. But on the compliance forms and documentation you have, that is on state prisoners only.
Yes. Yes. I can add to that you know, if a program is the stability of any program, whether it's financial or otherwise, is of interest. Currently now, I think there's about 112 state inmates that are under supervision by the Jackson County Community Correction Program. So if the program has some malfunctions, we'll say, there's some instabilities, that would ultimately affect their ability to provide supervision for those state offenders, then that would be of concern to us as well. So the overall stability of the program is important. Whether you're dealing with the court referral end of it and dealing with misdemeanors, or whether you're dealing with the state offenders.
Okay, and any instabilities that may come to light between now and October of 2018, would that allow us to make any changes prior to that fiscal year date or not?
I'm reluctant to say that the county could not make changes it deems necessary and appropriate outside of any particular time frame. Okay. Our interest in the Department of Corrections is that if certain changes are made that disrupt the supervision of the offenders that are currently in the program, there has to be some transition plan, obviously, in place. And then whatever changes occur, then that new program would have to submit a plan, its plan, to the Department of Corrections, consistent with 1518-170, Community Punishment and Corrections Act. The Department of Corrections would have to subsequently approve that plan. We would obviously provide guidance in terms of that application process, but each county interested in setting up a community corrections program makes that application to the Department of Corrections. The Department of Corrections then review that plan, and if it accepts it, then it approves it. And then at that point, the program then can
Good
become
transition.
operational. Sure.
I'm sorry, Jason. I didn't mean to-
No.
With the wording of today's agenda in the old business, it's a discussion on community corrections. This opens the floor up to anybody in the audience that would like to speak at this time.
I would like to say something to that because there's more than just the approval of the program. I don't think there would be a participant in the community corrections program unless the sentencing judge authorized that person to participate in the program. So even though you may have a program, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Williams, I think if you don't have the sentencing judge approve the person to participate in that program, it's not going to happen, and you're not going to have participants.
Judge, you're absolutely correct. And one of the things that occurs in the plan, when a county submits a plan, we also ask that county to submit verification of local support. And at the top of that level of support is the court system. Because as Judge Holt mentioned, that if the judge does not sentence, that's the only way an individual from the state side can get into community corrections. When the Community Punishment and Corrections Act was passed in 1991, you basically had two sentencing options for the court. They were probation and prison. And so in Alabama's attempt to deal with the increasing prison population, it created a third option, and that third option is the Community Punishment and Corrections Act. So you got probation, community corrections, and prison. There's no way that you get to probation, community correction, or prison except the court sentences you to either one of those. And while there is a community correction program in any county, if the court does not sentence, then there's no way to get there. And so one of the other key elements is the support of the courts, the support of the DA. We like to see support from the sheriffs in the counties where programs exist. And of course, you have to see support from the county commission.
Okay. And Judge, who would be our sentencing judges?
That would be Judge Graham, and it would be me. And I would like to add that, you know, we've had our community corrections program since the commission unanimously approved it in 1998. And during that period of time, I've not heard one complaint about our community corrections and punishment program. And if there are complaints, I would like to hear what they are, because I've not heard one from the community corrections program. And I've been a judge for over 20 years, 21 as a matter of fact. So what are the complaints? Can anyone shed light on what the complaints are?
I can only speak to which ones I've had.
Okay.
I mean, I've had just about everybody in the law enforcement, not just ours, but others, complain that they didn't feel like the program was being run correctly.
In what way?
Well, I didn't go in detail. They just said it wasn't run correctly and needed to change.
Well, those are just generalizations. To me, as the sentencing judge, I take my job very seriously. And when I put a felon out on the street, living at home, as opposed to sending them to prison, I want to make sure that that individual is not a threat to the other people that live here in our county. And the people that run the community corrections have been doing it since 1998. I trust their program. because I've not had it fail for me. And I've not heard any law enforcement complain about the community corrections program. I mean, if there are specific complaints, I would like to hear what they are. If it's the money aspect, that brings up the letter you received from the accountant, and there were some statements made here that are just not accurate. The $10 fee for each drug test, is it a drug test that the county commission gets $10 for each one?
It is.
No, ma'am.
Okay, could you explain that to the commission?
It's a law that was passed by the legislature that everyone that paid us to monitor, monthly monitoring each month, we set aside, we charge $40 for that monitoring. The state gets 30 of it. We set aside 10 for the county commission. It goes into a separate account.
So it's a monitoring fee rather than a drug test fee that was stated by the accountant that did the report?
That's correct. And that's for paid monitorings, people that pay us.
And you are who, sir? I'm sorry.
I'm the director of Jackson County Court Referral.
Your name?
Brandon Brown.
Thank you.
And that money is passed on directly to the county commission.
There was another statement in this letter that said, use the word incompetent, and I think that is a mistake, and I would like to point that out to the commission because it stated that they said some people on the list are incompetent, and I think there's some confusion there. I think the word should be indigent. And if you're indigent and unable to pay, there may be participants that do not pay because they do not have the funds to pay the fees. It's kind of like garbage collection. You probably don't collect 100% of those that get the service. And that's exactly what we have here with community corrections. You're not going to collect 100%, just like court costs that are assessed. We're not going to collect 100%. So I think there was an inaccuracy there in that report that I wanted to point out.
Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to speak at this time?
Yes, sir, I would. I'm Gary Morgan. I have a blog. I write. Most people know me. Mr. Williams probably doesn't. I have interviewed many people about this. Many people in the community. Interviewed judges. I've interviewed police officers. I've interviewed members of this commission. I asked for an interview from Mr. Kleckler and also Mr. Brown. That did not occur. That's okay. Let me just tell you what I've discovered in my interviews and reading and my findings. I did not think, this is my opinion, I'm not a lawyer. I do not have a background in criminal justice. My background is military and also medical, and a background also in the medical of managing drug abuse programs in the United States Army, amongst other programs. But one of the things that I have noticed is not necessarily in the community correction side of the house, but there's some questions within the court referral side of the house. One of those questions, I think, which needs to be answered and needs to be corrected, is the policies and procedures as it applies to drug testing and the client. One of the things that I've noticed in the interviews and has came forward is that when a client is called in for a drug test, and there is no doubt, Gary Morgan will never say that a program is not needed. For one thing, if we didn't have this program, the prisons would definitely be full. I have been told that probably 70–80% of the inmates within our county jail over here, county corrections, is probably drug-related in some way or fashion, and maybe 50–60% down in the state. So the program is needed. Number one, the program is needed to try to get people to be effective members of our society again. Now, all of us got problems, but for the folks that are involved in abusing drugs, it's a special situation that the whole community needs to be concerned about. And what are we going to do? The question is, what are we going to do to get these people, the folks that are involved, back to be productive, effective members of the community and our society again. Well, court referral, you know, they have this drug testing program. But, and this is my problem, the procedures. If an individual is called in and tested based on the color code system, and it is discovered a couple of days later they test positive. Now, as what I have discovered is that that individual is not notified immediately, or at least within the past month, individuals have not been notified immediately. Sometimes that, in most of the time, in the cases, that they are allowed to ride out until their next appointment. Now, also in interviews and in finding out, this is not necessarily true in the drug court. Once an individual tests positive, the folks in the drug court call them right in and say, hey, what's going on with your life? Why are you testing positive? I don't think that is the case in court referral. And if I am wrong on this, based on my interviews, Mr. Brown, both of y'all are here, please correct me. The judges are here, correct me. Because it is possible that in the interviews I'm told wrong. All right, but this is what I have seen. It does not make any sense. And it is not an effective program if a person is tested and you wait a month to retest or call that person in, and instead of concerted counseling to find out what is going on in their life, you just immediately arrest them, throw them back in jail. That is not right. If that is the case, that is truly the case. It would seem to be, and these are also the federal standards under SAMHSA, the federal program, that if a person tests positive on a drug test, as soon as possible, if you called in counsel, find out what's been going on, either refer to medical treatment, which I'm big because I'm an old Army medic and a medical administrator. So medical treatment, in my mind, is the choice. Now I know that's expensive, very expensive. So the county program has to be an effective program. It can't be effective if you do not get the client in immediately when they test positive to find out what's going on in their life, to direct that client into the proper mode, whether it be in corrections or whether it be intensive counseling to correct that person's problem in life.
I'd like to answer it.
Oh, yes, sir, please.
I'm Mike Brown, court referral, community corrections. We don't have the authority to call someone in and counsel. If someone comes in positive, they're tested positive, we do a report and send it to the district attorney. At some point, the district attorney will make a decision what they're going to do. Then it goes to the judge. So we don't have the authority to call someone in and say, hey, you know, how can we help? A lot of times if we did, they would go on the run. It could be a long time for law enforcement to get them picked up and save them from their cell. But Judge Hope, Judge Graham, Judge Word, they made it very clear, we don't have the authority to make the decision who we call in and who we, most of the time, they do let us help. Just for us to pick up the phone and say, hey, Mr. Smith, you tested positive for meth, come on in. These are some very dangerous drugs, and their minds do not work right on these drugs. Some of them are very dangerous people. So that would be great if what you say, if we could call them in and counsel and get them into treatment. We're not allowed to until the circuit judge allows us to go to the jail and get them in treatment or whatever she orders or he orders. Is that?
I think so. You know, there are two programs. There's the court referral program that is supervised by the Administrative Office of Courts in Montgomery. And then there's the Community Corrections and Punishment Program, and it's supervised by DOC. You're talking about felons there. But they kind of interact because those folks that are being supervised under community corrections that are felons, they probably need the drug treatment. Many times those individuals have drug issues that need to be addressed, and part of the program is to treat them for those issues. So they work hand in hand. If you have the community corrections program, you need the court referral program so that you can provide that drug treatment and testing that is necessary to properly supervise the community corrections folks. Sure, we want to help people that have been convicted of crimes so that they don't reoffend and there be other victims of their crimes. But our primary purpose, or I can speak for myself, and I think Judge Word would agree with me, our primary goal is to protect the people of Jackson County from being victims of a crime. And what that means is we have to do drug screens because people that are using tend to be those that are committing the crimes against the innocent people of this county. So my primary objective is to protect those people from being victims again. And the second purpose is to try to help those individuals who have committed these crimes against people from recommitting, to get them the help that they need. But, you know, if someone doesn't want help, it's not going to do much good. Someone has to be able to say, I have a drug issue, I need treatment. And if they say that, then these folks that have the court referral program, they will do everything within their power to get them the treatment that they need for their drug problem. But they have to ask for it. If they test positive after being placed on community corrections or ordered to successfully complete drug treatment, then that report goes to the judge, and the judge has to make that determination whether that individual should remain free or whether they are a risk to the people that live in our county. And it's a tough job. And people aren't happy when they go to jail, but families aren't happy when their loved ones go to jail. Judge Campbell told me right before he administered the oath to me as a judge that you don't make friends in this job. People don't like you to send their loved ones to prison or to jail. And I think the same applies to the folks that run community corrections and our court referral office.
I agree with every bit of that.
And can I say something? You know, I don't guess it really matters who supervises community corrections. But what has to be considered is we're dealing with people's lives. And to switch one person over here to get them supervised by this person or that person, the bottom line is, for us, although it's said that money is the bottom line, for one, we care about the people. And we put over 400 people on average a year into drug treatment. Every single year. That's inpatient treatment alone. That doesn't count outpatient treatment or other types of treatment. Over 400 individuals mainly from jail. We put into inpatient treatment across the state of Alabama and a few in Tennessee and Georgia. The times that we've said that somebody's tested positive where a judge maybe allow us to get someone into treatment or try to get someone into treatment without going to jail, I haven't had one instance where a person's been able to stay clean between that drug test and time to get to treatment. And when you go into Cedar Lodge, Sunrise Lodge, Caps, A Woman's Place in Tuscaloosa, Magnolia Ranch, you go into one of these places, they're not going to take you if you're dirty. So what do you do then? So sometimes the jail, to answer that question, even though, I mean, we're going to always have complaints. I mean, most people can't stay clean to get into treatment, and that's the heartbreaking part of it. Because they're doing what they know how to do. They use dope. And And sometimes people are mad at us because we're taking their God away. That drug. We deal with this every day. And I know this is just a program to most people, but we're there to help, and we see so many people's lives changed. They're not just a dollar, they're not just a name like even most counties are. It's just a name to somebody, or it's just a dollar. It's not to us. It may be a dollar, but it's a life. And it's the life of a parent, kid, or somebody like that in the family. So, and I think we'll always have those complaints out there when you operate a program like this. But I got many times more success stories than complaints over anyone in here. I guarantee you I could bring so many people in here that are not on the program, but that have been through the program that are still clean and sober. And that's the main goal. Thank you.
Getting back to the community corrections aspect of which is what you're considering undertaking, that is a specialized field, because you're talking about convicted felons in this program, and they have to be strictly supervised. The year's experience that the Browns have in operating this program is invaluable. You don't learn that from a school. You learn that from dealing with people. And they've been dealing with these folks for 19 years. So they know the ins and outs of the program. And you can't learn that overnight. And it is a trust factor with the sentencing judge that we know when we send someone through that program that they are going to be supervised closely by this program. And that helps me sleep at night. And I'm sure Judge Ward could probably say the same, but if you don't have that trust in the program, then you worry a lot, because we're taking a chance by placing that individual at home rather than in prison. We're taking the chance that they won't reoffend and that there'll be other victims of their crime than what has taken place in the past. So it's a serious issue, and one that should be considered very seriously by the commission before they undertake that program.
Judge Holt, you said that there were, that you trusted the program, that everything went correctly in the program. The gentleman from DOC mentioned that he has a compliance form for the state prisoners that go through the program. Is there anything in effect for our prisoners, our people that we refer? Do you do a compliance form, go through every now and then, randomly check 100 out of 500 of the people that go through there and make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed?
I don't understand exactly. That's DOC does
Yes,
that.
ma'am, they do it for their state prisoners, but the people, local people that we send, maybe, I think my understanding is Scottsboro City uses the program also. You know, is there something in effect on the local level or any place on the local level?
Mainly I deal with felons. So Judge Ward might be in a better position to answer
I deal
that
with
question.
those. All my cases are misdemeanors.
But those people go through the program also.
They are not state DOC inmates.
Right.
They are folks that have a marijuana possession or whatever. I use court or community corrections for monitoring of mostly money. If somebody is gotten 6, 8 months behind, a year behind, whatever, and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, I'll send them to community corrections so that they have to report to somebody and they go upstairs, they make a payment, they take that receipt to community corrections, and somebody makes sure that they're making that payment. That's how I know whether they're making it every month. Community corrections, if they don't come in that month, they let me know. They get put back on a docket, and it's like, okay, where you been? What's going on? There's no monitoring of that. I mean, there's no forms or anything like that.
But I know of other people that are in the program that aren't state prisoners that have to go to drug testing.
That's court referral.
Okay.
That's a separate entity.
But I mean, I'm just asking in general, since we're here to discuss this, is there a compliance form in place?
Yes,
because I have a question for him in a moment.
They have to. The court referral is supervised by the Administrative Office of Courts.
Okay.
They are the ones that evaluate their program, make sure that they're doing the things that are required as far as the protocol for approval of a court referral program.
So there's a checks and balances?
There is a checks and balances.
That's what I'm asking. One more question for you.
And I have not heard any complaints from AOC about our local court referral office.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. You said that if we decided to take over this program and everything, that you would be in place to advise us on how to go forward with that. Is there any way that you, or with the current program in place, advise us of how to move forward to maybe clean up for some of the complaints that we're hearing, make it a little bit more, follow the path, or some documentation in place? Is there any advice that you could give us on that if we were to, contact your office? Is that something you're legally able to do?
Sure. And now, if I understand you correctly, you're saying assist you in addressing the various complaints that have been lodged against the current program, or
well, my understanding in 1998, when the program was established, that maybe there wasn't an organizational thing that was totally in place. I've yet to be able to see that. I've asked to see that, and I haven't seen that. So if we do take it, well, we got you as an audience to ask questions. If we do decide to, do something to work on the program to, I guess like she said, checks and balances on that end, but the program that we're having issues with, would you be able to advise us on checks and balances of that program?
Absolutely.
I have where it was initially set up in 1998, if you'd like to look at it.
I have that resolution also. And I would like to offer, as far as any questions you have about either program, that my door is always open to answer any questions you might have about the court referral office or the community corrections and punishment office.
What is the dollar amount that's allocated for Jackson County? How is it based on? I mean, is it based on the number that runs through the system? Or,
yes, sir. Basically, every year we ask the program to project. Each program in their plan will identify a specific number of offenders that they are able to provide supervision for. We ask the program to project what they think the eligible offender going through their program will basically be. We work with them on trying to come up with that. Then the department will carve out a portion of our budget to pay a per diem for the offenders that obviously go through any community correction program. But every year we try to get some idea of how much money the department needs to set aside to pay that per diem for any particular account. Does that hit your question?
Yep.
No.
What amount are we've been allocated to this year?
Let's see if I brought that. If I brought that with me, I can get that, absolutely. I don't think that I actually have that with me, sir, but it's a very easy thing to do. I can get that for you. As a matter of fact, I can get it for you before I leave.
If that dollars is not all used in that year, does it come back to corrections, or is it carried over to move forward? Or
what we do is this: we kind of pay after service is rendered. Every month, the Jackson County CCP will send us an invoice. It will list on that invoice, and we pay for roughly for a 2-year period. Okay, they'll list every eligible individual on that invoice. Let's say Judge Holt sentences us. Let's say there's 50 people on there now that's eligible for per diem. The judge sentences in the month of November. Let's say she sentences 3 more people. So the end of November, and if they came today, the 16th, they'd be paid starting today through November the 30th for the month of November for those 3 additionals. But we'll get an invoice, and we require that they send us documentation. If all of the documentation checks out, they're eligible offender, they're correctly sentenced, and all of these other factors. And they'll request reimbursement. So we'll go through their numbers, and if their numbers are accurate, then we'll pay that amount. Now, for budgeting purposes, we set aside X dollars. I don't know what that necessarily is. Let's say for conversation, it's $100,000. Just say we'll set aside $100,000, and then each month they'll be drawing down against that amount. Let's say, for example, the program exceeds that amount. More offenders go on the program than is expected, for example. And that goes to $120,000. Then we would, if the money is available to us in our budget, then we'll add an additional $20,000. By contrast, if the program gets through the fiscal year and it only invoices for $90,000, then there's no $10,000 that is basically set aside. Each year is a new budget year, and we make new projections on an annual basis. Of course, all of those are obviously tied to the legislature appropriating funding to the department. And if that funding for us, and several years ago we had some budgetary issues internally, and so we had to cap what we could expend on community corrections. And when we have to cap it, then we obviously have to cap what we would ultimately make available to any particular program.
As far as the testing, is it done in-house? And if it is, how do you ensure the integrity of the testing? Do you have a lab technician at the facility, or one of you guys lab technicians? Or?
We have staff that collects the urine. We make sure the chain of custody form is that person testing. They sign it. It's sealed in a bag with the client's urine. It's sealed, and Family Life Center picks it up from our office and tests it with their testing instrument.
Can I ask who owns Family Life?
Gene Kleckler.
Does he have anything to do with community corrections?
Sure. He's on the board of directors, along with 3 other people that are treatment providers of some sort, are involved in the drug treatment rehabilitation. And I guess when my dad formed all this, those people were placed on the board so that we could have access before many other counties to get people into drug treatment. That's why the people that are on the board of directors are on the board of directors. They're all treatment related.
And I think one of the things the statute requires in a community corrections program is that the plan that is submitted offer treatment options for the individuals that participate in that community corrections program. So that's where the drug treatment program is so vital to community corrections.
I think as a combination of both organizations to work together, if you have them separate, you're not in any way benefiting the client. I mean, if you separate those 2 organizations, it's not because, hey, we think this is better for the client. There's no way that can make sense. But, as Mr. Williams said, going back to the community corrections, they do pay per diem for 2 years. I would say a high percentage of clients that report to our office that are Department of Corrections or state inmates, they don't pay for one reason or another. Some of them do pay. When they don't pay, let's say Department of Corrections pays us for 2 years per person. After that 2 years is up, you receive no money. And what do you, I mean, what?
So if they were serving a 10-year sentence, then the first 2 years you're paid by DOC, but the remainder of the client's sentence, you are not paid at all by?
That's correct. And let's say we have a guy that his EOS, his end of sentence date is 2031. He's going to report to us, this guy just so happens to not be able to pay us. And DOC doesn't pay us anymore. Well, it would be easy for me to say, well, he's not paying us, and Department of Corrections isn't paying us, we just won't supervise him as much. But you just can't do that. And
The judges wouldn't allow us to do that, for one thing.
Right.
The judges wouldn't allow us.
I mean, they have to be supervised, and I know it looks good.
And, you know, the clients that you have, they're convicted felons, and it's not easy finding jobs. And that's one of the things I have found with our program, is that they help their clients find jobs. They go out and actively look for employment for these individuals that are convicted felons. And it just helps everybody. It helps the individual, it helps their families, their children get the support that they need from that individual, and the community benefits, because those folks, rather than being in prison and costing the taxpayers money there, they are home, they're working a job, they're buying groceries in the community, they're buying gasoline in the community, they're putting back into the community rather than just being incarcerated.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of the program.
And having them together, they pay us one fee rather than, because when somebody, most of them are, the judge orders them to complete court referral also, because it's a drug or drug-related charge. But when they come to our office, we don't make them pay community corrections and court referral. They pay one fee. Well, if it was separated, that's just more money to the client that we pay. But
You said you send them to rehab, like Cedar, what was it, while ago?
Cedar Lodge,
Would you, the name of those places again for me, please?
Cedar Lodge, Sunrise Lodge,
Okay,
Caps,
okay,
A Woman's Place,
okay,
Olivia's house.
all right. Thank you.
My question on the lab testing, the lab that you send to, is it a certified lab? Does it have other customers other than you guys?
They're certain, they do DOT drug testing. Ours don't have to be DOT drug testing, or tested, but I don't know a lot about, the specifics of their lab. I know that based on the criteria that they have to report out drug screen results, that they have to report out, they're certified in every way.
I can answer that. Their lab is certified. I had a hearing on this. We took testimony on it a week or two ago, and their lab is certified. I've never had a problem finding results on drug tests admissible.
Certified with SAMHSA or Department of Mental Health, State of Alabama?
State of Alabama.
So let me get this straight. So 1998, Mr. Crownover started the program. And then in 2000, you took it over?
I think that's right.
Did we stop sending people to him because he didn't know what he was doing?
Dennis retired, didn't
Yeah, I'm just curious, because there was a 2-year lapse. He had 2 years and he could have not known
I don't
anything.
know, that is 20 years ago. Dennis retired.
Do I have to admit I was here?
I'll tell you one thing, when
I think
Mr.
you
Crownover had it,
That's what I meant.
yeah, he retired, but
He had one person.
he had one person on it.
DOC.
So,
And he's had it for 2 years.
so the judges play a vital role, let's just say,
Yeah.
in who goes on community corrections and who doesn't.
Is there any other discussion from the audience this time?
Sir, I have one more question, if I may. Go ahead. Just, y'all have a board of directors there, and Mr. Brown is the director there. Being Mr. Kleckler and their professional advisor, which I think she's probably a master. She has a master's degree in psychology on y'all's board, and that's in the rest of y'all's board, of course, healthcare professionals, mental health, very commendable. Do y'all see any conflicts? I mean, I guess the conflict question, and I've reviewed your 990s, the conflict question goes to how do you choose who's going to do your testing? Because there are other test sites available here in the county and immediately surrounding us. Does the board vote on that, or is this is it a decision by Mr. Brown, or how do you go about that?
He has the authority to choose who. I mean, we could do our own testing in our office. We just choose not to.
They want to put a lab in our office. For 5 years, he's wanted to put a lab. I don't see no benefit in that. And I've heard it for 2 or 3 years. That's a conflict with having Mr. Kleckler on the board, you know. And I talked to an officer at F&B, and I talked to an officer at BB&T to go on their board. And can you imagine me calling one of them and saying, hey, I need some help getting this person in treatment? Mr. Kleckler, Family Life, if we got someone in jail that doesn't have a penny to their name, and to get someone in state treatment or in treatment, they have to have an assessment, which has to be a master's level person. I can pick up the phone and he can have that done within just a day or so. So it's a selfish motive, you know.
With no charge to the client.
Yeah, with no charge. And he can pick up the phone and help us get in, same way with the other board members. Their treatment, very treatment-oriented people. And I can call and, got to remember, we got about 5 or 6 facilities, state-certified treatment facilities, state. Now, we can send them to Bradford for $30,000, $35,000 if they've got the money or insurance. But these 5 or 6 treatment facilities, Mountain Lake, Pearson Hall, these other places, it's 67 other counties trying to get their people in there also. And I think we probably put more, and this is not bragging, we probably put more people in treatment. Well, DeKalb County and us probably put more people in treatment than all the other counties put together.
Yes.
Because we believe in treatment. The judges, thank God that they believe in treatment. But I'm sure it's judges around the county, or around the state, don't know what treatment is. So we have so much support with Judge Word and Judge Graham and Judge Hope that believe in treatment. We're not the only people trying to get a person in a bed somewhere. AOC will not allow us to send to flop houses, and we wouldn't. So it's got to be state certified. So family members do call, screaming and hollering and saying that we can't get them in, we're not doing our job. It's just easier said than done.
Mr. Porter, did you have something?
Just sort of, unless there's other comments, as sort of a conclusion and summary is, you know, how we got here. The county got involved, the county commission got involved in this about a little over 2 years ago as a result of basically a records request for records regarding community corrections. At that time, the commission, there were only 2 of these commissioners were even here then, but we began to look at it and quickly determined that we did not have, the county did not have the documentation it was supposed to have. And we talked to Mike and Brandon about that. And so we just don't know. We don't have this information. And there, in 1988, as Judge Hope said, that there was a resolution adopted by the commission approving the incorporation of Jackson County Community Punishment and Corrections, Inc. as an entity, but there is no There was no plan ever presented to the county for approval. Not from then, not until today, has the county ever approved a community corrections plan, which was supposed to occur. But it just never did. And I'm not blaming anybody for that. It just didn't happen. So today, the community correction plan that the county was supposed to have approved in 1998 before this program started just didn't occur. And like I said, Mike was not in charge at that time. Somebody else was. It just didn't happen. So, and the plan that we have, I think we've gotten a couple of versions of plans since then from Mike and from Brandon, and they began and referred to things in 2007. So we know that that was not a, quote, plan that was developed in 1998. So based upon that, we started asking other questions, and that's how we got to the request for the audit that was attempted from our CPA. So that's where we are, is from the county standpoint, and how we got to where we are. We've got a number of, I think Mr. Morgan submitted a records request. He got the same response that everybody else has, and that is we just don't have any records other than we have the resolution. So we know that that was done. We know that the corporation was formed as a nonprofit entity. We know that. We know they filed 990s. We know that. But as far as the records that the county has, they're just very minimal, and we recognize pretty quickly that the county commission had no authority over the court referral program. That has nothing to do with the county whatsoever. The community corrections program, we have a little bit of input because, again, we're supposed to get some payment from community corrections, and that was what the audit was about. We're also required to approve the plan, which had not been done, and that's how the county commission got involved in all this. So that's just sort of a summary of how we got from 2 years ago to where we are today.
Do we know how much the county has received as far as the community corrections program?
Yes, that's on file.
And what is that amount?
It varies each month, so you just have to pull a yearly detail.
And
We get 2 checks a month from 2 different bank accounts, I believe it is. And
what is that average, do you know?
I would say maybe somewhere around 3,000 a month or somewhere in that range, possibly with both of them combined, because sometimes the work release part is smaller than.
So like 83,000 in 3 years? Would that be correct?
That would be probably pretty accurate, because the work release part varies due to, I guess, the weather, seasons, or whatnot.
I can ask you a question, but with the 2 bank accounts, those 2 bank accounts in this audit?
Well, that was actually, I think Mr. Porter, correct me if I'm wrong, it was never called an audit. It was called he made it clear up front that it was not an audit, that they couldn't do that. It was a informational
Study or?
Fact finding.
Yeah, it was
review.
I forget what he called it, but it was not an audit, and so they could not do an audit.
Those 2 accounts were not.
They were not in the general ledger.
Okay.
Did the community corrections submit a plan to DOC for the operation of the program?
Yes, we have a plan on file, yes.
So that could be provided to the commission?
You know what